Welcome to the EntrePastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Hey, do you love a good business launch story? I don't know about you, but I do, and we're getting ready to share one with you on this episode of the EntrePastors Podcast. Hey, my name's Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and I'm so grateful to have you watching us here on YouTube. This week in our episode, we're going to be hearing from one of our most recent graduates of our Business Launch Academy. His name is Mark Foster, and like many of the people that come to EntrePastors, he has been serving in pastoral ministry for quite a number of years. And although he loves his work that he does inside of the church, he also desires to provide a little bit better for his family in the area of finances, and really has resonated with the message of EntrePastors that we can do that through the entrepreneurial marketplace. We can go out into the marketplace and start a business. That's exactly what we help pastors do with our Business Launch Academy. And Mark recently came through our program, and a few months ago did not have a business of his own, did not have a second stream of income. And as of today, Mark has a coaching business that is up and off the ground. And we just heard from him recently that he just signed his first paying client. We're super excited for him about that, and we're excited to share his story with you in this interview. So without any further ado, check out this conversation that we had with Mark Foster on his business launch story. Here we go. Well, Mark Foster, it is my pleasure to bring you on to the EntrePastors Podcast, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you, Les. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. So you are a recent graduate of our EntrePastors Business Launch Academy. You were one of the very first people to go through it, and we just wanted to have a conversation with you on the backside of that to kind of pick your brain a little bit about the experience of, you know, what it was like going through there. What were some of the things that you took away from that? But before we get into all of that, let's back up and just start by giving a little introduction of Mark Foster to the EntrePastors community. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Mark Foster. I pastor in southern Maine in a little town called Lebanon in southern Maine. And I'm kind of I've been in ministry my whole life because my dad was a pastor. So I grew up in it, one of 7 sons, and 2 of us are full-time ministry. But I'm the only one who's full-time pastoring. So I kind of grown up in that space and went to Bible college right out of high school, married my wife, and worked for a couple of years as an assistant pastor, and then started pastoring as a, quote, senior pastor when I was 25. So super young, really young, probably too young.
Yeah, well, that's how old I was when I started. When I planted a church, became a senior pastor,
senior leader. 25.
Yeah,
25 years old.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the word elder or senior pastor, either one of those fit me at 25. I'm not sure they fit me at 43, but not at 25.
A 25-year-old elder as like jumbo shrimp, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. So you've been in pastoral ministry your whole life. You and I pretty much kind of have that same thing in common, and Les probably as well. We both grew up as pastors' kids, and so I have a very similar story as far as all of that goes. So how did you find the EntrePastors community? Like, tell us that story. How did you connect with us originally?
A friend of mine texted me an episode of a podcast. I don't even remember the name of the podcast, but you were being interviewed on it, Jon, and you just started like telling my story on this podcast. You were talking about EntrePastors. You were talking about the mindset, especially when it comes to ministry and money. And every pastor, especially of small churches or smaller churches, knows that struggle, knows that issue. And you were just, everything you were saying is like, I started having anxiety listening to you. Like, this guy, this is my story. He's telling my story here. And I texted it to my wife. I was like, listen to this story. This is us. And so as a result of that podcast, I went to you guys' podcast, the EntrePastors podcast, and I think I binge listened to every episode you had over the next 3 days. Like, just listened to episode after, and every one, even though everybody's story was different, it was just like, man, these guys have an answer that I've been looking for. And I think I reached out and had a coaching call with you, Jon, and then a little bit later, you contacted me with the opportunity for the Business Launch Academy. So
okay,
that was
cool.
Kind of,
Well, so that's a new word, anxiety. We don't, our goal is not to be anxiety producing in our content. So tell me more about that. What was it about me resonating so much with your story, or maybe you resonating so much with my story? Like, what was it about that caused anxiety? So what, tell us your story. Take me deeper into that.
I think that, and anxiety, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's just like, I mean, my heart's racing and I'm having, I'm up pacing in the living room while I'm listening to this podcast, because
Mark, in the trauma world, I think they call those triggers that you were listening
okay,
to.
yeah. Well, then your episode definitely triggered me, because we've been working so hard for almost 20 years to try to figure out how are we ever going to be able to retire. Even currently, after 20 years of ministry, my wife went into nursing after 20 years of ministry. She went into nursing, starting out making what I was making after 20 years in a career. And I know, pastors aren't supposed to be in it for the money, all those stories, everything. But I was just like, there's no way doing this that I can ever make any significant money to retire on. But I was feeling the guilt of, doing something else besides pastoring. Once in it, you're supposed to always be in it. And so I'm listening to you talk about these things and push on these mindsets. And I'm just like, oh, it was a mixture of hope and dread and fear of being let down. Like, is this just, two guys talking and there's really nothing to this? But the more episodes I'm listening to, it's like people from all different arenas pastoring are finding this to be true. So it was a mixture of hope and fear, I think, more than anything else.
So as you and I started, we had a conversation together, and then we invited you to step into this Business Launch Academy with us, which, by the way, maybe we'll say this on the front side of the pod and when we set up the little introduction to it. But our Business Launch Academy was a 16-week program. We're going to bring it down to 12 weeks just to get people through it even faster, because we think we can help deliver the same results in a little less time. But the idea is we want to help take you from a place of an idea for a business and walk you through the process of actually launching it and having it up and going, and preferably, profitable, at least where you have sales coming in and some cash flow coming in. And that's a lot. That's a lot to cover in a, 3 or 4 month period of time. So we're trying not to overpromise. Right. But we really think that the secret sauce is helping people take action, not just talk about it, not just listen to a podcast and be inspired, but actually do some stuff. And so you signed up, man. You jumped in and said, I'm going to be a part of this. I want to ask you to talk about, what were the struggles? Because I think everybody has struggles when it comes to jumping in and taking action on something like this. And so take me back to that point. You're working as a full-time pastor. You got all the narrative and the baggage around what that means and stuff. And here you're being invited to launch a business. Like, was there something specifically that you struggled with in terms of thought process that needed to be changed? Or was it more like, man, I'm ready, let's go? What was that like for you?
I think for me, I had two struggles. One was I was worried about what my church would think. If they found out, like, I'm going to start a business. So part of me was like, I'll just do this secretly, but then there's no real way to do it secretly. But I was worried what people were going to think, because, I would be taking time away from what I'm paid full time to do. That was a huge struggle for me, is, can I ethically start a business and still justify the salary that I'm getting, still justify the position that I'm in? Am I going to be shortchanging the people who are paying me and trusting me to do this job? And then the second fear I had that I had to get over was, what if I try this and I fail? Because failure, huge fear of failure. I think everybody faces that, or most people do. So it's easier. It's always easier to make excuses than to try. because excuses don't come, you don't have to take responsibility if you make excuses.
So now that you're a few months into this and you decided not to be a secret business owner, behind the scenes, and you did go somewhat public with that. I mean, you've had open conversations with people in your life about the fact that you're building a coaching business and maybe exploring a couple other avenues as well. Like, now that you're on the other side of it and you're kind of out with that, like, has it been as bad as you thought? Have there been, super negative things? Like, what's that like for that pastor that's listening to this going, man, what would it be like if I actually told my church I was starting a business in our community or online or whatever? What was that like for you?
Well, my church has been supportive / silent on it. Most people haven't said anything. The leadership, the deacons, they know, they're all in support of it. Most of them are business owners themselves or work in high level positions. So they were pretty cool with that. I have had probably the biggest negative pushback I've had is, especially in the coaching arena, is people not being able to understand why, as a pastor, I'm going to start charging for something that I've been doing for free for my whole life. And there's been multiple conversations about that. And that's been a learning process for me as well. So there has been some pushback from church members and people who know me as a pastor in that arena.
And just to be clear, I want to just speak to the nuance of that. There is something when a pastor goes into a professional coaching business, there is some overlap with pastoral ministry, some of the duties. So one of the things we often encourage is not that you can't ever be in a paid coaching relationship with someone that sits in your congregation and is a part of your church. But there is maybe a little bit more caution that needs to be taken there versus if you just own a landscaping business in town. Although, having said that, I know a good friend of mine who has a tree trimming service, and he will not work with people from his church. He just won't, even in that industry. But in my mind, this is just my opinion, that's a lot easier to delineate and separate in someone's mind than sitting down for a life conversation that you're calling coaching. And they're like, yeah, but last month I just came to you with this and you were my pastor and you did it for free. So it can be done, but you've bumped into that a little bit. It's you, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, but it wasn't so much that you were pursuing your own church people as prospective clients for your coaching. It was just them saying, but this is what you do as a pastor. We don't get it. Right.
Yeah. Because I think that there may be other careers out there that are like this, but it's definitely true of pastoring, in that is people, when you're a pastor, like, you're always a pastor. Everything you do is through I can't even go over someone's house for a meal without, I'm not just there as Mark, I'm there as Pastor Mark, whether I want to be or not. Right. I mean, nobody wonders what a doctor does on their time off, or what a lawyer does. They have a job and they have a personal life, but for a pastor, it's just all one thing. Yeah. And so I think people really struggled with, how can you do this? You're a pastor. So, the idea of maybe other things that weren't directly related to pastoring, I think that's been the biggest challenge for church members, even though I'm not pursuing them as potential clients.
There you go.
They're struggling with that, I think.
Well, just to be clear, I'll say it for you and for everyone else listening, like, their baggage doesn't have to be our baggage, right? Like, we can still move forward with clarity, and our calling is not in question, and we don't have to buy into that baggage. I mean, that's a big part of the message of EntrePastors is we're moving on. We're not looking for permission anymore. We're not asking people if it's okay if we can make the ends meet financially and thrive. Like, we're doing it. So, and it's good to walk gently with your church through those transitions. But yeah, normally you're going to bump into that. Rare would be the story that a pastor launches a business and every single person, 100% of the church is just ecstatically thrilled. Like, there's going to be questions, there's going to be confusion, and there's probably going to be people who push back. But praise God, man, like, you move forward with it. You're on the other side of it now. And maybe, is it fair to say it hasn't been as horrible as the voice of fear would have led you to believe back?
100%.
Possible.
100%. Yeah, it definitely, most of the fears that I had never materialized.
Yeah, so there you go. That's big. And then the other thing you mentioned was just kind of the fear of failure. And thank you for being vulnerable and transparent. Like I think it was Brene Brown one time. I just remember hearing her say, it's okay to let fear come along for the ride, but just make fear sit in the back seat. Like you can't let it drive. And I think that's good because it acknowledges the reality that I'm scared. Like I deal with feelings of fear around the stuff that I do, especially if it's new, if it's out of my comfort zone, there's fear. And yet I'm still going to drive forward, and fear doesn't get to have the steering wheel or the gas pedal or the brake. Like fear has to sit in the back seat and come along for the ride. I like that metaphor, and applaud you and the others who went through our Business Launch Academy, because that is taking action. Mm-hmm. So here's a question for you. What's something, maybe without giving away all of our secret sauce of Business Launch Academy, what were some of the wins that you had or takeaways, some of the breakthroughs? I mean, put it in your own words, but what was it like going through that process with a group of other pastors?
Well, I think a huge win for me was actually starting the business. If I had attempted to do what we accomplished in the 16 weeks by myself, I never would have done it. Knowing that I had to be on a call every week, knowing that I was going to have to give an account for what did you do in the last week, having someone to ask a question to when I didn't know what to do, even just the checklist. That was, I mean, for me, there's no way I would even be where I am at this beginning stage if I hadn't had that support and accountability. So I think that was a huge win and a huge reason, I think, to go through the program just by itself, because I didn't fail at starting something. And that's in huge part because of the support of Business Launch Academy.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. And Jon, I believe that as far as that expectation or that goal is concerned, you're welcome to correct me, but I think we were 100%. I think everybody that started was successful in that started BLA was successful in starting their business. And anyway, I'll leave it at that, but I believe we were 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is there's legitimate legal businesses that exist today that did not a few months ago.
Yeah,
that's right.
And again, I don't want to say because of Business Launch Academy, because ultimately Jon and Les are not the heroes of the story. We are coming alongside of the real heroes of the story. And that's the people that are the main characters that are taking action, pushing through the barriers. And, we're just there to walk alongside and encourage and give counsel. But, yeah, man. So we applaud you for taking those steps. And that is the power, we believe, of doing it in a group, doing it together, not being alone, and having that accountability. It's exactly what you said, man. It kind of forces that action in a way that you have something tangible to look at and say, we did it, man. We accomplished something together. So
absolutely. Yeah. And one other thing is we would all love to get to the point where we're listening to the voice of God and that's all. But the fact is that we do listen to other voices, and a lot of times it's wise to listen to other voices. With many counselors, plans succeed. So we need good counsel as well. But what happens is, if you're not careful and intentional about it, Mark, you end up hearing voices that are sort of, even though they might mean well, they tend to lean negative and they're naysayers, and you have these doubts anyway. It's not like you need a lot of, but when other people are speaking into you as well, still things that are true and what really can be, and then doing it, then it just, you kind of start to see, hey, what's possible now, instead of, kind of waiting for another shoe to drop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that what we experienced in those 16 weeks was more about permission than it was like telling you what to do. There were a lot of times where you guys were like, here's information, here's where you can find the information, here's what our experience is. But it really was, if we didn't have a desire, if we didn't have a goal, we would have gone through 16 weeks and nothing would have happened. So it wasn't like every week you guys are holding our feet to the fire. You have to do this, or it wasn't that kind of pressure. It was about, you have permission to do this, and we're here to help guide you along the way. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? So I think that's real. I don't think there's any reason for someone to be afraid of entering into this program, that they're going to be forced to do something that they're not comfortable or ready to do, because that's not what it was. It was just like, you have permission. We're here to help you.
That's a good point. I'm not going to be more vested in your success than you are. Like, I'm not
Right.
going to be more emotionally tied up in it than you are. If you're not committed to it, well, then why in the world would I be committed to it? But man, where Les and I find someone who has a goal, who has a dream and a desire, man, we'll support that all day long. We'll come alongside of that and give the resources and the encouragement and whatever we can to help you go farther, faster as we move together through it versus you just trying to figure it out on your own. So yeah, that's very well said. And I appreciate you saying that, because to anyone listening, this isn't a magic bullet, like
Right.
You've got to do the work. This comes down to, at the end of the day, Jon and Les didn't do any of the actual work that our
Right.
clients did that went through Business Launch Academy. Mark did the work. So good job on that. One thing, with that, we don't have to get too deep into the weeds on this, but I just want to maybe again say this to give that permission to someone listening. So Mark, when you and I first talked, you had a couple ideas, not just one, and that's not uncommon when we talk to pastors. A lot of them, if they've been thinking down this road, they already have at least one, if not several ideas of some income streams that they'd like to try. And by the way, if you're wired as an entrepreneur, welcome to that's not a flaw about you. It's a feature. It's what's right about you, is that you see opportunity all over the place. And so you had a couple ideas. Primarily, as we went through Business Launch Academy together, we were helping you with your coaching business and getting that established. And again, you don't have to say more about this than you want, because I know this is still very much a story that's being written. But literally on the last call of our time together, you dropped this bombshell on the group of like this brand new opportunity in your community that has presented itself for you to pursue one of those dreams of yours that you've been thinking about for a long time, of having kind of a retail coffee shop place. So again, you don't have to say more than you want to say, but I just like that detail of the story, because it's still being written as we speak. Like early before we recorded this podcast, you kind of brought us up to speed and gave us where you sit today with it. And so, anything you want to add to that other than just sharing that part of the, it's okay to look at a couple things at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's part of what Business Launch Academy did, was open up my mind and eyes to these opportunities and to the potential benefit, both personally and even in your church. Even as a pastor, if you were doing these things, you guys talk a lot about ministry in the marketplace. And I think it may not be a unique thing to you, but it definitely is where I heard it first. And it's something that rattles around in my head all the time. So yeah, so I've, started this coaching business, and then this other opportunity comes along, and I'm like, some of the mystery was taken away. Like, how does this even work? Because of what we learned over those 16 weeks. I'm like, I could do this. I could follow this path too. And maybe I should, because I don't know what trajectory either of these two are going to take. So I'm here because I put all my eggs in one basket to begin with. So now, I'm ready to say, hey, this might be the opportunity, or maybe that, but unafraid to try those doors and knock on those doors.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And there is a flip side of that coin, because I know there's the kind of the common knowledge or wisdom out there that says, man, just laser focus on one thing. And I think there's times that is good advice. And yet, like you said, here you've been just laser focused for all these decades on, I am a pastor, it's the one thing I do, and look at where we are financially. So there is a flip side to that coin, that as you have the capacity, and each person's capacity differs from one to another, but some people have the capacity to have a few things going at once. And I know there's people that would push back on that and go, no, you can't. You can only do one thing. Well, I've learned to walk and chew gum. Most entrepreneurs have, and it's possible for them to have a few different streams of income being established. So, it can get crazy in certain days. You can feel that more at times than others. But anyway, I just wanted to share that detail to, again, maybe that resonates with someone pacing their living room floor right now.
I don't think I'm talking about like I'm going to run all of these things. But at this beginning stage, I don't know what's going to be the most successful, and I'm willing to shed one, both, or the other of them. If one of them begins to be the successful one, hey, I'll focus on that. So at this stage, it doesn't cost me anything just to knock on a door and get some information and ask some questions. So yeah, I mean, my capacity may be different than someone else's, but it doesn't cost anything to ask questions and to pursue.
That's something we say often too, is just that action brings clarity. So, and you can sit back in fear and just spinning your wheels, and well, maybe someday, the minute you start taking forward momentum, you start to see clarity for the next step. So again, you're farther down the path than someone that's been listening to us from the beginning and still hasn't pulled the trigger for whatever reason. They're still stuck on those fears of failure. What am my church going to think? What are my fellow pastors in the ministerial? They're going to be jealous of you is what they're going to be. So do it, lead it, show them how to do it, model it. Anyway, stop worrying about what the ministerial association is going to think of you having a business. Go for it. Anyway, now I'm preaching. So
yeah, Mark, the fact is everybody's kind of got their own thing. And the truth is people think about you and what you're doing a whole lot less than we feel like they are sometimes. Everybody's got, especially people in ministry, they're so focused on what they're doing. There's little time to do anything else. So I love though that we're going to probably wrap this up, but one of the things that I wanted to share that's a big part of BLA, and specifically your case, is that I think it was really healthy to have some friendly competition, in that group as well, going back and forth with a colleague. And it was kind of an iron sharpening iron thing. That was really nice to see as well. And it probably put you on a little faster track, I would say.
It did, although I did just have to send out those coffee beans in the mail, and that hurt a little bit. But
well, when you wager,
that's right. That's how it goes.
We had a little gambling going on, a little betting going on in our little friendly wager. By the way, Les and I didn't start that. That was totally Mark and another guy you may hear from. Had a little
fun though,
little wager going, but it did add a level of fun to the conversation. So Les, anything else that we should have asked, or Mark, anything else you want to say? I think my last question to you in this interview will be, speak to that person that's heard about Business Launch Academy. We've got another one coming up in the near future that we're going to be kicking off. And, what would you say to them? But feel free to add anything else that you were hoping I would have asked you and I forgot to ask you. So what would you say?
I can't think of anything that I wish you would have asked me, but I can say that if you're thinking about it, if you've been listening to it and you're wondering whether Business Launch Academy is a good choice for you, I don't regret it. I'm looking forward to seeing it bear fruit as I go forward. It's not a magic bullet, but these are two guys that are here to help. And if you're ready to make an investment in your future, man, this is a great program and a great way to do it. And I'd be happy to just throw 100% of my support, whatever good that is, behind that and say, do it. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you have to take that first step. So if you're a pastor, especially of a smaller church, man, go for it. Do it.
Love that. You read that perfectly, man, just the way Les wrote it. So thank you for being such a good reader. That was awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, well, this is good, man. We're proud of you, Mark. It's been a pleasure walking beside you through our Business Launch Academy, and I know that relationship's going to continue on into the future. And so we're going to be cheering you on as you continue to build and grow this thing. And thank you for being willing to come on the show and just share your story and experience with our audience. So all the best as you continue to move forward.
Thank you guys for taking a chance on me.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.